It's almost 3 in the morning. You fed him. You changed him. You rocked him. You sang to him. You did everything the books told you to do. And yet, here you are, again. Why won't he just sleep? Most parents assume it's one of 3 things: hunger, discomfort, or just being difficult. And if none of those work, they tell themselves the most dangerous phrase in parenting: it's just a phase. It'll pass. But neuroscience tells a completely different story. What's actually happening at 3 a.m. isn't random. It isn't weakness. And it definitely isn't your fault. It is, in fact, one of the most sophisticated neurological processes the human species has ever evolved. Which means at 3 a.m., your baby is not choosing to cry. His brain simply has no concept of night. Research from Harvard Medical School shows that melatonin, the hormone that signals sleep, isn't produced in measurable quantities until week 9 to 12 of life. Before that, there is no sleep signal. There is no off switch. There is only now. Here's where it gets critical. When a baby cries and isn't responded to, their body triggers a cortisol response. Cortisol is the primary stress hormone. In small doses, it's normal, necessary, even. But in a developing brain, chronic cortisol exposure in the first months of life has been shown to physically shrink the hippocampus, the brain's memory and emotional regulation center. A 2012 study from Stanford University found that infants who experienced prolonged, unaddressed nighttime stress showed measurable differences in hippocampal volume by age 7. What happens at 3 a.m. tonight can still be visible in a brain scan 7 years from now. At birth, your baby's brain contains approximately 100 billion neurons, more connections than there are stars in the Milky Way. But nature is brutal in its efficiency. Between months 2 and 24, the brain undergoes a process called synaptic pruning. The connections that get used survive and strengthen. The connections that don't get used are permanently deleted. What you do and don't do in response to your baby's nighttime cries is directly influencing which neural pathways are being reinforced right now. The connections for trust, for emotional security, for stress regulation, or the connections for anxiety, hypervigilance, chronic stress. This window doesn't stay open forever. The most aggressive pruning phase ends around age 3. Now here's the part the exhausted parent at 3 a.m. needs to hear most. When you pick up your crying baby, when your skin touches theirs, both your brains release a surge of oxytocin, the bonding hormone, the trust molecule. In your baby's brain, this oxytocin surge directly counters the cortisol response. It doesn't just soothe them emotionally. It chemically interrupts the stress cascade. You are not spoiling your baby by responding at 3 a.m. You are building their brain. Research from the University of Notre Dame found that children who received consistent physical comfort during nighttime distress in infancy showed significantly higher empathy, lower anxiety, and better academic performance at age 10. One response, 10 years of outcome. So here's what we know. The 3 a.m. cry is not a malfunction. It is not manipulation. It is not weakness. It is a 200,000-year-old evolutionary signal designed for one single purpose: to ensure an adult never leaves an infant alone in the dark. But here's the twist that changes everything. The parents who suffer most at 3 a.m. are not the ones whose babies cry the most. They are the ones who were never told why. Because when you understand the neuroscience, when you know that what you're doing right now is literally sculpting a human brain, the 3 a.m. cry stops being torture. It becomes something else entirely. It becomes purpose. Before we finish, 3 things you need to know for tonight. 1. The 5-minute rule is a myth. There is no neuroscientific basis for waiting before responding to a newborn. In the first 4 months of life, immediate response does not create dependency. It creates security. 2. Your cortisol affects theirs. When you approach your baby in panic, they can detect your stress through your touch, your voice, your smell. Before you pick them up, take 3 slow breaths for their brain, not yours. 3. This ends. The circadian rhythm stabilizes between months 3 and 6 for most infants. What feels eternal is, neurologically speaking, a very short window, and you are doing it right. If this changed the way you see your baby's 3 a.m. cries, share it with another parent who needs to hear it tonight. Our next video covers what happens inside your baby's brain during the first 30 seconds of eye contact, what they see, what they feel, and why it matters more than any toy, any book, or any app. They know more than you think.